Learn online with unique access to the iconic MCG and a big-hitting Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Oh yes, another one of those jingles that sets the scene, and we welcome you back. Welcome to tonight's edition of what is the State of Our Football Nation. Josh Parrish running the gun and George Danikin alongside him. Trying to direct things. We've got a couple of guests, which is terrific. Importantly, they're going to join us to talk about a potential announcement which has some bearing on some very important times in the game's history, that is football's history, and also in Australia's history, but more about that in just a moment. Let's introduce our first guest, Federal MP Meryl Jane Swanson, who represents the people of the seat of Paterson. Welcome, Meryl.
Thank you, George. It's so great to be with you on Football Nation Radio. It's awesome.
And more importantly, you're right in the middle of things at the moment. You're right in the middle of a federal election campaign.
Yes, it's a pretty busy time, I must say. Don't worry. I had my first meeting at 6:30 this morning, and I'll finish up at my last one starts at 7:30 tonight. So, and I'm just about to go and meet at some wonderful veterans here at the Toowoomba Bay RSL, George. So, if you hear a bit of background noise, the lads have arrived and they're starting to have a couple of middies. So things are going pretty well here in Toowoomba Bay.
Well, RSL is very appropriate because we're going to be talking about some of our ANZACs who did a tremendous job years and years ago, and everyone who's worn that particular uniform has done a tremendous job each time they've been called upon. But that time and those people sacrificed a lot more than just their lives. They sacrificed for many their families. At a critical time in Australia's history. We were a young nation at the turn of the 20th century, didn't quite know where we'd go, and we were called upon to help the empire. And a great many young men put their hand up and went, not really knowing what was ahead and what lay in front of them. Let's talk about this fabulous area that you represent, Paterson, because it's the Hunter, it's the nursery of Australian soccer or football as we know it, and it remains to this very day a tremendous nursery for both men and women to play the game. How long have you been a part of the scene and a part of the area? I do know that in a prior life, they say in this modern world of ours, we live through three careers. You were at 2KO in the early days of radio, and at NBN TV, you were researcher, producer, and presenter. So you've done it all. So is this part three of your career?
I'm hoping so, actually, George. Yes. No, look, it's been this seat, this area that I'm so glad to call home. Of course, I'm a Curry girl. I was born in Curry, went to Curry High. And you're right saying that the Hunter broadly is a real nursery and has been for many decades. In fact, all the way back to before the First World War for football. And indeed, we saw, it was very interesting in the Hunter, obviously the coalfields where I'm from, Curry, Cessnock, and all the surrounding villages. We saw a lot of people come across. Now, they came from Northern England. They came from England itself, further down, obviously. Then they came from Scotland. They came from Ireland, Wales particularly. A lot of Welsh coal miners. In fact, that's part of my family lineage is Welsh. And what happened is they came to extract the coal from the fabulous seams in the Hunter all those decades ago. But they, of course, brought with them their culture. So we saw things like, a lot of School of Arts popping up and things like a Stedfords, where people would sing. The Welsh, of course, great, renowned for, You'll Never Walk Alone and all the singing. So we saw all of that culture come with the miners and their families, and it was so strong and it bonded them together, of course. And they brought their sport. They brought football with them. So a very, very strong feeling and sense of belonging that emerged in Kurri Kurri, the coalfields more broadly, with football. And, of course, those same people and those young men were called upon, as you rightly said before, to serve their country. So it made sense when they went off to places, tragically like Gallipoli, they took the game of soccer with them. And I know that also in places like Maitland, just a few years ago, we had a young team that actually went on a tour to visit some of the sites of World War I, and they took a flag from my office, but they also took the history with them of those boys that were the same age as them. Some of them were about 17, 18, and they went to retrace the steps of where some of those football players had been when they were in war and where they played football while they were over there. And it was a really important thing that they did. So, and of course, the Soccer Ashes is the other thing that we're going to be speaking about today, which I'm very much looking forward to talking to you about.
The thing that fascinates me too, at that time, some of the clubs in the Hunter, in Newcastle and in the surrounds, were at the time some of the biggest and most impressive clubs in the history of the game in this country.
Yes, and that's something that I'm looking forward to finding out more about as well. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on local football soccer history, but I do know. I mean, for example, in more recent history, of course, Craig Johnson, was well renowned for being part of our furniture around the coalfields, a good guy, and of course Newcastle and Lake Macquarie as well. So we've had some terrific players, and interestingly, we've had players, and in fact, I know a lot of these guys still who had children that I went to school with, for example. They were actually brought out, they came out to Australia, and then they worked in the mines, but then they were also employed to play soccer. And it was a very serious, and some of them actually came out just to play soccer as well. So, we had a lot of professional soccer players around where I grew up. And of course, the culture still remains. Look, we're also a big league area, but, football, the round ball code is, of course, one of, the beloved things. The Great Western Bears, we were having a little chat before about them, amazing club.
Well, Ian Syson, welcome to the program. How are you? Ian, of course, is a regular on FNR and knows his history. And when you mentioned the Bears, I knew he was going to pipe up. So, Ian, jump on board. Tell us what you know about the Bears.
Well, I'm in the early stages, or early advanced stages, I guess, of researching a history, and what Meryl says bears out completely. In around 1915 or 14, a whole swathe of English semi-professional players came to Western to play and really lifted the club. And the same thing happened in the 30s, and the same thing happened in the 70s. They almost go to England to find players to bring them out. And so there's a terrible story about one player called Bill Lambert who was killed in the early 20s. He was a fabulous player. He'd captained New South Wales, and he was a miner, and he was killed at Hebburn Pit and in a fall, and it just affected the whole community. So it's not just the role of the trade or the industry. It's also the tragedy that is part of that industry. Some figure like one miner dying every 15 days.
Yeah.
It was extremely dangerous, and you've only got to spend a few moments at the Jim Comerford Memorial Wall up at the Cessnock Miners Union
to
building.
See the numbers.
And there are brass plates of inscriptions on this enormous wall, and it brings it home. Every year we have a memorial service, and very tragically, still people lose their lives. It's still a dangerous industry. It's far safer than it ever was, but it always brings it home to us, and we light that miner's lamp. But you're really right there, George and Ian, that there is such tight-knit cultural links between mining, football, the arts, you know, the singing, the playing of musical instruments, and it's brilliant, and the history of it all, you know, it is just absolutely brilliant, and it's something that I think more people, once they hear the stories and understand just what happened, they'll be really engrossed by it. I'm quite sure about that. Yes.
Ian, I just want to ask, what's missing, in your opinion, in the picture that we have? Because so much of this stuff has been lost, and there's so many artifacts that we don't have access to anymore. What is the kind of ghost that you're chasing, I guess? What's the holy grail of this ANZAC football research?
Well, there's several holy grails. I mean, there's one specific one, and that's Meryl's already mentioned it, the soccer ashes. I mean, does it still exist? It was this it's this beautifully crafted, ornately crafted object created out of artefacts that came out of Gallipoli and symbolised union between New Zealand and Australian teams, soccer teams, and competition and union. And it seems to me to be such a powerful symbolic token, yet it's gone, it's missing. Last seen in 1954, but it's big, it's kind of beautiful. I can't imagine anybody throwing it out, but who knows? It maybe, you know, maybe it was lost in a disaster or something. Who knows?
Or it could be in someone's collection. Is that what you're saying?
It could be, and if so, I really think they need to have a good look at it and think about, you know, returning it to Football Australia. So that's possibly the Holy Grail, but we've got so many Holy Grails. We've got so many memorials, so many objects that we've lost. The Merryweather, for example, the Merryweather Roll of Honour, Merryweather Advance. 76 names on it was in the School of Arts in Merryweather. And then when they tore that building down, I think they just dumped the Roll of Honour, and it's hard to know why. Bronwyn Law, the memorial historian in Newcastle, claims that there was a phase in the 70s when people just stopped caring.
Is that right?
About this kind of material culture. And things like that.
Can I just jump in there? You've got an announcement in the event that the Labor Party wins the upcoming federal election. You've got a tremendous opportunity to put your hand up and support the game, and you want to do it by a grant, a research grant for funding more research into the history of the game. Is that my understanding, or am I on the off the money?
No, you're completely on the money, George. In fact, I'm really delighted that you have Ian on the show today, and I'm sure he'll be very pleased to hear this. But an Albanese Labor government is going to support historical research on the links between Australia's military and football history, including searching for that holy grail, the soccer ashes. So we're going to be providing historian Ian Syson. Hello, Ian. You'll be pleased to hear this, with a grant of $95,000 to go in search and hopefully find the soccer ashes. But equally as importantly, recreate and tell those stories, really pull out that information so that more people can find out about the soccer ashes. How do you feel about that, Ian?
Blown away. That's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money that will go towards doing some amazing things. The first thing we have to do is make sure we get the databases organised where we can capture every Australian soccer player who went to war in both big wars and other times. We can start telling stories about the individuals and the clubs, and wow, it's just, you know, it's amazing. And it's going to put a lot of people to work too. It's going to give a lot of people reward for work they would do otherwise voluntarily, and so that's going to be awesome to pay historians at least kind of properly.
Ian, a question without notice, and to you too, Meryl. The thing I'm very keen to know is, I understand that records over a century would get scattered, would get lost, or would get moved around. But I thought the Australian War Memorial had a vast repertoire or a vast resource of information. Isn't it simply a matter of going into those back rooms that we never get to see, the public never gets to visit? Or is there much more at stake, or much more that you need to do, Ian?
That's a resource. That's a really important resource, and they have the information, but it's not. The information is not structured to our needs. We have to develop the tools by which we can get into their data and create it for our purposes. Now, we've set up 2 databases already, Newcastle and Victoria, and we've had a really great effect. There's like 650 Newcastle players. We've probably captured 300 of them already. The sad news is about 80 of them died in war. Victoria, similar kind of numbers. And so, but it's a matter of doing this really methodical process where you're triangulating information between different sites in order to find the information that we need.
Meryl, it seems to me that ANZAC Day and the ANZAC spirit is stronger today than it has been for quite a number of years. Can you explain why?
Look, I think it's really, really interesting, George, and it's interesting what Ian was saying before about the 70s. How not that people didn't care, but I think our awareness was probably generationally lower then. We have had a resurgence of information and interest, particularly from younger generations, about Gallipoli, about the First and Second World Wars, and about all the other conflicts, Vietnam, Korea, many other conflicts. So I think that this is really positive, because what it does, it actually encourages people to want to know more. And I think this is the beauty of Ian's research. What we're actually going to do, and what Ian's going to do with his wonderful team of volunteers, is he is going to introduce a new level of interest in a whole different tranche of people who might be interested in soccer, or they might also be interested in the history of our wars, and it's going to bring the two together. And I think that's fantastic. So again, I just want to say thank you, Ian, for taking us on this really important historical journey. And I'm so looking forward to what you find. I mean, he's hoping that we can find that soccer ashes, and he's hoping that we can, bring to life the stories and what happened with that razor case. Where was it last seen, just out of curiosity, before I let you go? Do we know? Do we have any sort of leads about where that was last seen?
The photograph taken of it being packaged in I think in New Zealand to be sent here or the other way.
Right.
And
okay.
And that's it. That's the last thing we've seen of it.
And the other thing I just want to add on to this, George, is I think this is going to mean a lot for a lot of veterans, because it will be great for them to know that subsequent generations care about what happened, and care about not only the conflict and the terrible things that they went through, but also people are still very interested in the other things that happened, such as the playing of football. How did it happen? Where did they play? How did all of these things sort of eventuate? And of course, I'm really proud to also say that it builds on Labor's commitment, $519.2 million we've got put aside if we win government to strengthen the services that our veterans receive with things like Veterans Hubs. And I know that this story will be the icing on the cake in terms of the history of our veterans. And you can hear things getting pretty raucous here at the Tanilba Bay RSL Labs.
That's typical. That's just typical. It's always good to hear. So, always good to hear RSL clubs and full of life. That's what we need.
Yeah, I love a razzle. I love my local razzle. I've got to say I love it. George, I might have to say goodbye. But again, delighted to announce this grant going to Ian and his team of $95,000 if we are able to win government in a couple of weeks. And, as of next week, mate, I'll just be chained to a pre-poll.
Meryl Jane Swanson has been fantastic. The member for Paterson, just giving us a sense of something very special. Should the Australian Labor Party win the upcoming federal election, there's a grant, a research grant available to Ian Syson in the vicinity of nearly $100,000. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for taking the opportunity, and thank you for making this an exclusive announcement on FNR. It means a lot to us as well. Thank you so much, Meryl.
George, you do an amazing job, and all the best to you and your crew, and also to Ian in the hunt for the Soccer Ashes. And I'd love to join you again, and maybe we can talk about what Ian's finding. We'll have an update along the journey.
No worries at all. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Cheers.
Meryl.
Good on you, Ian.
Well, we've lost Meryl, but we've got you. Just take a moment and take us through just how important does this grant? What does it actually mean? We understand that gives you the opportunity to travel and to get some very important information, as you said, the data tools that we need to establish this history and give it some form that you can use in a better fashion. Have you got great faith that we can get this just where we need it and enrich the game and also enrich our historians?
I'm absolutely sure, because this whole project, I mean, COVID didn't help. This whole project has stalled because of lack of money. Lack of money. Northern New South Wales were very, very generous at one point with money to my project, but it's sheer hard work. It's donkey work. It's where someone's got to go into Trove and start correlating between articles and the ADFA database and the military. I've lost what it's called at the moment. The memorial database.
All right. Is that on microfiche or do you have to use?
It's all digital.
It's all digital now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's something.
So it's about you see your name in the paper, and what you have to do is say, well, this person's been reported dead. You need to go to the ADFA database to find out their service record and those sorts of things, and you triangulate it with the war memorial. So it's just donkey work, as we might call it, where someone's got to sit at a computer for 8 hours in a row. No one's going to do that for nothing.
Yeah, no one's going to do it if they've got a bad back. Like, how's your back, by the way?
It's about as good as the rest of me.
Oh, gee.
And so there are people I know who are very good at this, who are going to say, "Well, yes, I can think about doing it if you're going to pay me at a decent rate."
I got you. Okay.
That's so important. It's just, and my ultimate plan, is to, as I said, find every senior soccer player who enlisted in the Australian Armed Forces, and have a little narrative about each of them. And that might be just, when they enlisted and, what happened to them, and that information is going to be vital for every club in Australia. Every club in Australia will be able to look at its own history. Like the Western club I'm working on now, I just recently realised that 8 of their players were killed in the First World War. Eight guys who played for Western.
That's a senior team, mate. That's almost a senior team.
Yeah, and so, some of these players were very good players, and it's
would have gutted the competition at the time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this grief is part of these clubs' history, and I don't think they need to wallow in it grief, but they need to acknowledge it as part of their grief, and I think they want to acknowledge it as part of their grief. Part of their whole culture. So it's it's going to be really valuable, this database, for everybody, and of course I'd want it to be completely open access, and when we're confident that it's a meaningful database. I'll also be able to follow leads, go and do research in places like go to Toowoomba and see if we can find it. Well, Toowoomba's a ridiculous town. The number of people who who played soccer there in the early before the war, and who enlisted. It's staggering. It's absolutely staggering. The Toowoomba figure. So they put up a couple of rolls of honour. Let's go and try and find those. Let's visit these places. It's all very much archival work at the moment. It's only when we're going to start dealing with maybe the Korean or the Vietnam conflicts that we can start to think about oral history. But all that needs to be done.
And I know you've encountered quite a lot of institutional indifference to this over the journey, and it's been quite a lot of hours spent and personal sacrifice. So I commend you for what you've been doing, and obviously huge congratulations, especially if this grant comes through.
Great. Yeah.
I guess the overarching question is this a way for Australian, and I'll call it soccer because that's the term we kind of use in this historical period. Is this a way for Australian soccer to latch on to some kind of roots in Australian society where there's been such an attack on the game in that it doesn't belong and it's this kind of foreign import that's an outsider? Does this history uncover the fact that it does have deep roots in Australian society and culture?
Always had. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's right, George. It always has. And the problem is that the game's presence vanishes into thin air.
Mm.
It participates in Australian society just the way all other sporting bodies, people who play different sports, all participate in Australian life. For some reason, soccer's input disappears.
Look, I think
partly it's soccer's own fault.
Yeah. I think we've been outmanoeuvred in some instances, and some of those that you've touched on 100%. The 70s was an interesting period, a dark one, it struck a nerve when I heard you talking about the 70s being a period where there was a lot of apathy, especially in the Hunter and especially in Newcastle. And I can remember also it being a really interesting time. Rugby league took hold in about the 70s in a manner that I hadn't seen before. Up until that time, we had a fabulous football culture, round ball code, and we had rugby league, we had rugby union. But in the 70s, we saw a switch, and it seems to me that that's where some of that unsettling commentary came to be, and we hear it resonate to this very day. I think it's a super exciting time. I know what you've been doing on air with us has been driving this commentary and alerting people and saying to them, there are some marvellous stories out there. It's not only about providing solace for families and friends and others, it's also about giving justice to those young men, predominantly young men. There weren't, I don't think we lost too many women at that time, and if we did, it was in other roles. But on the battlefronts in those days, it was predominantly young men who lost their lives, and they went with a spirit and a fervour that very few people can appreciate. They were different times, but if we can tell their story, if we can give a sense to their extended families and their communities of what price they paid and what they did, it would be just marvellous.
So to answer Josh's question, the point is to locate soccer in Australian life.
Yeah.
Unquestioningly, there it was. Look at it. It's participated in the events that have given us our mythology, and we're part of the team.
Australia and New Zealand are coming up playing some games. Is this part of this as well?
We could. I think we need to play into that a little bit more.
I'm yet to be convinced that that's happening. I've heard rumours it's happening.
Yep.
But if it happens in New Zealand, I want to go, so I need to plan.
Yeah. They have opened up New Zealand, haven't they?
Yeah, it's much easier to get in than it used to be. Ian, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck with the research, and we hope this comes through for you.
My jaw nearly hit the table at the desk when she said that figure.
Well, you understand what it means, don't you?
Yeah. It's astounding, and I've got to start thinking about organising a team.
Well,
in the event.
It won't be long before you find out which way it goes.
I know.
Yeah. Thank you once again, Ian. All the very, very best.
See you guys.
Ian Syson, Dr. Ian Syson, giving us a sense of the possibilities that lie ahead should the Australian Labor Party win the upcoming federal election. And there are no sure things in life, but I can vouch for the fact that if things go as as Ian is hoping, that money would be used to uncover some tremendous stories, and again, chronicle not only the deeds of those young men, but give, I think, communities a better sense of just how much they lost at that time.
Yes, and give these clubs something to honour and commemorate.
Absolutely.
And, if you can find living descendants as well of these people,
it'd be
a way to really connect the club to the community and honour the sacrifice of, those young boys who went off 100 years ago. And it's it's fascinating research. I've heard sort of little updates from Ian over the course of the If You Know History program, which is on hiatus at the moment, but hopefully we can get it back when Ian has some major uncoverings to share with us.
Correct, I can imagine, because I would say to you, his weekly role would be almost non-existent. It'd be fired up in getting all the information, and if he's travelling, mind you, with so much technology, you might be able to do a on the road show.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't that be fun?
Check in with Ian on the road. Which cities he checked into
This
next.
is State of Our Football Nation on FNR. We're going to take a break. When we come back, talk some more about what is promising to be the single most exciting week of football in the A-Leagues. Because can I just say this before we go to the break? I don't know what everyone's been talking about because most of the commentary over the last few months has been, the A-League season is this, the A-League season is that. Well, can I tell you, with a game to go, we are in this remarkable spot where there are 3 teams. Yes, they are from Victoria. I can see all the Sydney, the South Australians, the Brisbane crew going, why are you always talking about Victoria? Because it just so happens that there are 3 teams, Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, and Melbourne United. They're all on the cusp of doing something quite remarkable. For Victory, it would be, we were out of it until we won it, which is like a reminiscent of their women. Yeah, who were on the wrong side of the betting, but got up and claimed the title, which was quite remarkable. Western United, this would be almost their perfect season.
Yeah, and their first trophy, their crowning achievement.
Imagine winning an A-League Premier's Plate, playing away from home every week.
And playing away at Hindmarsh as well, not an easy game.
Correct, and for City, it would be their first opportunity to go back to back. So 3 tremendous scenarios, all lying in wait. Take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the possibilities.
Ever wanted a career in football? At the Global Institute of Sport, you can now study a master's degree in football business or football coaching and analysis right here in Australia. GIS is the largest provider of sports degrees in the UK, with campuses at Wembley and Etihad Stadium. Learn online with unique access to the iconic MCG and a big-hitting Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
You're listening to FNR, Football Nation Radio. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. George Danikian, Josh Parrish, I love that little ad you played. Just look at his face. Just look. Are we referring to Tony Sage? Right after the game, full time, if the camera had gone any closer, Tony would have eaten the camera. He was so excited. Why? Because the bottom team knocked over the team at the top of the competition. What did you make of that?
I mean, it was pretty remarkable, wasn't it? City felt they did enough to do better in that game, but really they looked to me sluggish and off the pace, and Asian Champions League hangover. But against this Perth side, who couldn't buy a win in recent weeks and were totally mailing in the rest of the season, to lose that when you could have wrapped up the Premier's plate was a worrying sign for City.
Well, I can totally agree with you, but by golly, at the same time, if I was needing an injection to pump up this final week of the competition, have we gone into throttle mode now, full throttle mode?
I mean, 100%. I mean, I compared it to Stephen Bradbury's gold medal. When it comes to Melbourne victory, he thought they were out of it. And
then they're in it.
And then Western United and Melbourne City stumble on the same night, and suddenly they're in with a shot in second place now.
To all those people who thought, COVID had well and truly derailed the A-League competition this year, I go this to them. Because, what have we got? We've got 2 nights. The whole thing is at fever pitch. So the Isuzu Ute A-League, with all the live action of the remaining games, is now well and truly focused on who will win the Premier's plate. Josh Parrish, who gets it? Will it be Melbourne City? Right? They were hoping that the game against Perth would be right, but they didn't realise it was going to be an ambush. And Tony Sage loves ambushes. But it's not over. Not over for City, as you touched on. Their attention now, what do you think? Squarely directed at Wellington Phoenix?
I think so. They'll be without Curtis Good, who had an unnecessary red card in the dying moments of that game. It was in stoppage time. Didn't need to make that tackle. The game was already gone.
Was it a red?
It was a second yellow for sure.
Okay,
so
second yellow.
I don't think you can have too many complaints. It was an unnecessary challenge.
I ask you only because you wear with pride that referee's jersey and that membership logo.
Well, I think they would have been going soft on him, if they hadn't brought out the second yellow card for that one. But they'll be without him at the back. Scott Jamieson had a pretty interesting interview. We all know he likes to share a piece of his mind.
Stuff. Yeah, listen, the captain wears everything on his sleeve. You're never going to die wondering what he's thinking. He's always going to tell you, right? I don't have a problem with that. Sometimes he's bitten a little bit more than he can chew.
Well, he changed his mind mid-interview. First he said we weren't good enough and, people need to be held accountable. And then he corrected himself and said, actually, we played well enough to win and we were just unlucky. I don't think he didn't quite have his head right going into that. He wasn't very on message, let's say.
So are you suggesting to me that he was probably suddenly reading Pep Guardiola's post-match summary instead of his own?
Perhaps it would have been clairvoyant if he did.
Wow.
But
okay, so
the other thing I had a problem with what he said was that he tends to build up I don't know if it's the media. I don't really know who he's talking about. But he tends to build up all of these external critics in his mind. And I don't know if that's...
He's had a few.
Maybe that's a self-motivating tactic for him. But
it is. I think
he said, a bit of credit wouldn't go astray for their Asian Champions League performances, and they, represented Australia unbelievably on their Asian stage.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's true. I think they did okay and got knocked out by... from a group that was one of the easiest draws that an Australian group...
Say we. Say we.
We?
Yes. In other words, it's this collective media saying, the easiest, competition run you could get. How could they possibly not get through?
I mean, it's not.
That was the commentary before they even played a game.
But I don't think they represented Australia superbly. I think they were slightly disappointing. I don't think it's a travesty because it's a tough competition and they were playing away from home. And BG Patham has home advantage. It was probably one Tom Glover error from progression.
Oh, don't start.
But I think to say that they were superb representatives of the A-League is incorrect. I think Australia needs to strive to progress. Australian teams should be striving to progress from this competition, and anything less should be a disappointment. Otherwise, we've got a losing mentality in Asia.
All right, that's fair enough. Let's talk about Victory up against Sydney FC. It's the game that's coming up. I think it's Saturday night. It's 7 o'clock. It's on Paramount Plus. And what are you thinking about this contest?
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Make you feel nervous?
Well,
we spoke to Ivan last week, and I think he's in cruise mode. I think they've done enough. I think Sydney is worn out. I think this is Bobo's last game for Sydney.
I think they'll lift to play Victory. I just don't think.
Really?
I think this game is too important for them to put in a shift like they have in recent times in the A-League. Maybe they need a rebuild. I think they do, probably. There's going to be a big off-season clean-out with a lot of expiring contracts and things, and some retiring players, as you mentioned, Bobo. But I just don't think they're going to give Victory an easy time when they know Victory have something to play for. I think it's a motivating factor in a derby game to try and spoil the party.
If Sydney wins, is it still the end of an era, or if they lose, it's the end of an era?
Well, they've missed the finals either way. Or actually, no, they have an extra game in hand. I should correct myself there.
Right. So it could shape an entry into the. It could shape an entry into the finals somehow.
Well, it depends on
back door.
It depends on what Wellington do. It's not in their hands at the moment, but far from it. They're several points off the pace. But if Wellington can get a result tonight against Western Sydney Wanderers, then they'll be clean into the finals, and Sydney will have nothing to play for.
Okay.
Whereas if Wanderers can get a result against Phoenix, that sets up the entire. That sets up the entire denouement to the season, because you've got Sydney with something to play for in terms of finals football, and you've got Wellington with something to play for on the final day against City. So there's this domino effect in play.
And talk to me about the F3 derby again. One of the games of the season a few weeks back. They're at it again. It's like that movie, Gentleman Jim Corbett. The Corbett's are fighting again, and everybody's going to run out and see what's happening. They're up to no good, these guys. The Jets against the Central Coast Mariners. And Nick Montgomery, does he get the gong? If he gets them into the finals with a strong performance here, does he lay claim to maybe the chance of coach of the season, or does that go to the guy who wins the Premier's Plate?
I think if Victory win a trophy, win the Premier's Plate, Tony Popovich is a good shout considering where they were last season.
Yes, fair.
But Nick Montgomery is right there with him, and depending on the results of this final round, could well be the man, because I think he's been superb. He's integrated the young players.
And with the players at hand.
And made some really smart signings. Obviously that's a team effort, but the Jason Cummings signing has been an inspired choice. It's totally changed the dynamic of their team and their potential of the team. And then young Garen Quoll scoring 4 goals in 7 matches, including 3 in the last 3 games. It's just an unprecedented impact for a guy that young. And, I was impressed with him when I saw him a couple of years ago playing at the African Nations Cup when we went out and did that for FNR.
Commentary?
Yes, I did. And I thought, who's this, skinny, tiny youngster, nutmegging players twice his size? He's a bit of fun, but I never expected him to
Continue
kick
to
on.
blossom.
Well, not kick on in this fashion and not have this great an impact at such an early age. He's grown, but he's still pretty slight, and he's just so agile and adept with the ball, and his finishing has been incredible. So, that's an impact that I guess they weren't counting on, but the way that they've embraced the Quoll family, I think Tang and Diddy will be the next brothers to sign up.
The last clash between these two gave us something quite worthy. Have you got the intestinal fortitude to give me a bet?
I think Central Coast will win. I think the Jets, they've been great to watch this season. Becca Mikultadze is still going for the Golden Boot, so they want to feed him chances. But there's already vultures circling on their star players. There's a strong rumour that Daniel Pena will end up at Sydney FC next season, which I think is quite well founded. And I think there will be several other Newcastle Jets players who will be targeted by rival clubs. So it's tough for them. Obviously, they performed really well in the last F3 derby to come from behind and give themselves a chance. But that disappointment there, I just think Central Coast have more to play for, and they've got a much better back line.
All right, we're an hour away from seeing the Western Sydney Wanderers take on Phoenix. Have you got an idea of how it might finish?
Well,
are we talking a draw, or are we talking a win to the Phoenix?
I could see it as a draw.
Or have the Wanderers got enough?
I could definitely see it as a draw. Okay. This is, of course, the Mark Redan derby, as it will forever be as long as Mark Redan coaches against Wellington Phoenix. Wherever he coaches, it becomes the new derby, and he was the pantomime villain over in Auckland. Oh, I can't remember if it was the Auckland or Wellington game now, but anyway, he did the theatrical bow to the crowd as he was sent off and so forth. So it was good fun. He knew his role in the whole production
and played it to perfection, didn't he?
He did. Unfortunately, Steven Ugarkovic took one of the worst penalties we're ever likely to see in that game, losing his standing foot and doing a John Terry 2008 impression. But I can see Wellington, based on their poor recent form and their lack of a proper midfield pairing with all the injuries that they've had, stumbling in this one. I could see Western Sydney Wanderers getting a draw, but maybe I'm just hoping for that, given the fact that it will set up a more exciting finish to the season.
Okay, look at the potential final 6. Mm-hmm. What's your feeling? What's your feeling? I know there are some precious games, and they are vital because they'll give us a really good clue. Last night, I think last night was an aberration. I've always been a believer that Perth has something about it. Maybe it's the way they line up. Maybe it's the egos. I don't know. But I think last night was an aberration. As a City fan, I'm hoping it was an aberration. Otherwise, congratulations to Victory or to Johnny Aloisi's Western United, who have had a remarkable season, and when you think about it, they haven't had a place to call home. I don't care what anyone says. That's almost as awkward as, remember Spurs when they had to play at Wembley for a couple of years there? Yep. because they were building that magnificent new edifice, and people were saying, "Oh, they're playing away from home," or yes, but they were playing every week. They were playing away from home. So, what does it teach you? Does it teach you to discount those other things that we talk about, like building a fortress? Amy Park, when the Victory fans turn out in droves and in that normal voice that they embrace, they are mighty powerful.
Sure.
They give them that jet fuel. It's like in Greek it's called tsipuro. It's the stuff you pour into your system after a wonderful dinner. You might call it a digestive, but when it's drunk like that, it's like fuel. So I'm thinking Victory with a huge crowd at Amy Park would be terrifying to play against.
I think this will be a pretty big factor in the finals, but given the fact that they're playing away to Sydney in this last game, they might be a long shot getting the Premier's Plate. But, because they require City to slip up at home against Wellington.
Popovich loves long shots.
He does, but, he's never succeeded in the final series, so I think that's the ghost he's chasing, not necessarily the Premier's Plate, which he's won before.
So who finishes in the 6?
I think the 6 stays as it is, but I think Central Coast and Adelaide could potentially swap places because Wellington, they would need to lose both games. Sydney FC would need to win both games to scrape into the finals. I don't think that's happening. I think Wellington will get some sort of a result against Western United tonight. Possibly a draw. Central Coast, Adelaide play Western United on the final day of the season, whereas Central Coast, as you say, are playing Newcastle. I think possibly Western United get a result out of that game, Central Coast win and leapfrog Adelaide into 4th place and get the home final in the first round, which against home. Well, they'll both have. Sorry, no, Central Coast will get the home finals right the first time. I was trying to work out this labyrinthine final system. But yeah, Central Coast, I think we could see a home final in Gosford. As for the top 3, I could see that also staying as it is with, potentially all 3 teams getting some sort of result. Maybe Victory and Western United could swap places, but I just don't think Melbourne City are going to lose against Wellington on the last day of the season.
Okay, we talked about Montgomery, who's had a sensational season, in my opinion, with what he's got at hand.
Sure.
And what he had when he was dealt with at the very beginning. And you're right, he's gone out in some very shrewd signings. What do you make of Johnny Aloisi's effort this year?
I think it's been massive to turn around, I guess, the mood in the playing group. He needed to come in and lift some spirits and lift some underperforming players from last season, and he's done that. He's coped with some serious injuries to Diamanti, Lustica now out and potentially for the rest of the season, so they have to adapt to that. But he's turned Lachie Wales from a player who would run down the byline and then cross the ball out of play to an incredibly effective player, not only on the wing, but also playing as a number 10, which I don't think anyone saw coming. Together with Hayden Fox, who we keep hearing amazing things about from all these Western United players about the little details that he picks up in training sessions and on game footage with regards to their defensive
the
structure.
green room for you would give you enormous insight,
sure.
wouldn't it? Yeah?
And John Aloisi is so greatly admired and liked and respected by these players who just want to play well for him because I think he's a great leader in that regard, and he's got good technical expertise when it comes to his backroom staff, particularly Hayden Fox, who will deal with some of the smaller details, and Johnny can focus on being that inspirational figure at the helm and being that leader.
Yeah. Look, whichever way you look at it, despite the naysayers and knockers, the season is finishing just as we were hoping it would finish, with a spinnaker drawing us forward in leaps and bounds. There are some exciting matches, and one, of course, in less than an hour on 10. What do we rate the 10 performance of Paramount Plus? Do we give them a pass or do we give them a big fail? First year in. I'm talking about the technology.
In terms of the technology, I think it has been a failure because we still don't have a rewind button. We still don't have a watch from live option if you tune in late to a game.
I think you have a rewind button in the NBL coverage, in the NPL coverage, don't you?
On desktop you do. On mobile, they're still struggling to implement it, but it's coming. So you can. They've already fixed it on the desktop version of the app, of the website. So you can actually open that in a browser on your phone and get the same experience. So that works. That's a little workaround for people who like watching NPL and want to get highlights back. But and that also has certain features to watch goals back as they happen. The events are tagged and then there's an automatic highlight that pops up the bottom that you can watch back before the match replay is done, which is not an option on Paramount Plus. So you have to go trawling through social media to see if they've happened to post it or not on Twitter during the match. So I think from a technological perspective, and you think back to the streaming issues they had at the very start, they had audio problems, dropouts, quality issues, ball tracking issues where it was ghosting and blurring on the screen. They've basically had every single problem you can
throw at them
from a technological perspective. And from the actual coverage, I think it's been good. I've liked seeing a couple of commentators that I like come back on board.
Yep.
It's been nice to
And
hear.
I'm sure there'll be further growth and further maturity, and there will be new faces. I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, and Robbie Thompson, I think, has been a great addition to the lineup.
He's actually a lovely guy. When you listen, and we've had an opportunity to speak to him a couple of times, he does love the game, absolutely loves the game, and tries very much not to overplay his hand. And that to me is always a plus. You let the action, you let the story that's unraveling in front of you carry the day. All you've got to do is fill in the little blanks and remind the crowd of just some of the key points. I mean, the great Richie Benaud, pardon me, the great Richie Benaud was very much a different commentator in his younger days, and as he matured, you saw a very, very fine balance to everything he would do. And, a couple of words and let the action carry the day. And some of the action has been, some of the goals. What's your goal of the season? Have we got one?
Goal of the season is a good shout. I think Craig Noon's volley for MacArthur was pretty good. I like that one. Tommy Orr had a couple of ridiculous strikes in the same month.
He did.
Spring to mind. But I think it has to be Ben Garuccio's scorpion kick. I don't think you can go past that one.
Well, Benny and the family would be regaling one another for the next 50 years, I reckon, about that. Because that was quite something.
I think it was even better than Riley McGree's because Riley McGree's was an instinctive action.
It was a big lob, wasn't it?
Exactly, and he was sort of trying to control the ball and he couldn't, so he just flicked out his heel and what happened. And it was incredibly spectacular, but Garuccio's had forethought, and also we've heard from the Western United players that he's actually attempted it in training. He didn't. He face planted. He screwed it up, but he tried. He's actually gone through the process of trying that.
What more can you ask? And now, before I let you go, there's no way we cannot comment on what's happened in the last 2 days in Europe. 4 teams went at it. I thought Villarreal were going to do something quite remarkable at 2-0, and then of course they fell apart.
I think Gerard Moreno limping off really did them some damage. He probably should have been substituted earlier.
Again,
but
Liverpool have been quite relentless, so congratulations to them and to Klopp and their coach. I thought City had done enough and they'd measured their finish just as you wanted it. And then, of course, that spirit. You wear a Real top for a reason because you're a very, very good player. There's also a remarkable culture in that place that says we are champions. And the other thing is under Ancelotti, I think wherever he's gone, he's always let his players play, hasn't he? He hasn't given them too much to think about other than, I'll organise you, but at the same time, I'm not going to handcuff you. So organisation, yes, for the defence, but he's not going to lock you down and say you can't run that line. And look what's happened. Rodrigo, he brings him in, not 1, but 2. And then, of course, did we mention Benzema again? So who wins it now?
Well, I think I also have to, now you mentioned Ancelotti, bring up my football tweet of the year, which is somebody on the timeline who said the other day after the 4-3 against Manchester City in the first leg, said Ancelotti will sit there with an eyebrow raised for 90 minutes and his team will score 3 goals. What did he do? We don't know. But apparently it works.
Got 3 goals.
Exactly.
And the eyebrow... Up, baby. Up.
And again, that tweet had a week-long lifespan because it played out again today and was getting a lot of retweets as it should because it was a very, very funny observation.
Who wins? Don't avoid the answer.
Who wins? I mean, Liverpool, Real Madrid. Mo Salah wants revenge.
Of course he does.
He said it in no uncertain terms.
Yep. He's also said
game.
We want to play Real.
Yes, that's exactly what he said. He said he wants revenge for. I mean, they shattered his dreams.
There's no Gareth Bale, so he's got a big chance.
But it's also the Ramos incident where he was injured. They felt it should have been a red card. Ramos got away with it. And then Mo Salah was injured for the World Cup straight afterwards. So that obviously is still rage that's burning inside him. And for that reason, I think we're going to see a Mo Salah grand final.
Can I throw a red herring in there?
Go on.
Is Bale still an option to be picked?
Don't think so. I think he's done. I think he's.
Could you imagine if suddenly you Pierce?
It would be. I think it would be a great move. I think it would be a great move by Ancelotti just to put him on the bench, just to leave it in and let him warm up. And I reckon at some point during the Champions League final, we have to see Gareth Bale summoned from the bench as if he's about to come on. He's never going to play because he just doesn't anymore.
His back is
he's done.
Spasms.
But just for the mind games, I think Real should have him in the matchday squad and just tease Liverpool a little bit. Let him warm up behind the Liverpool goalkeeper, invoking the spirit of Loris Karius.
I didn't realise just how much malevolence you have in your makeup. It's either menace or malevolence. Tell me something. You're off to greener pastures because it's an exciting evening at Preston Lions.
Yes.
What have you got planned?
Off to the Genesis Steel Stadium Pavilion. We're going to be catching up with Bianca Trimboli from the women's team.
Oh, wow.
Famous surname, I know.
Correct.
Eva Harrington as well from the women's team will be joining us. And I had an opportunity last night to do a little pre-recorded interview with Chris Theodoridis, who's the goalkeeper you'd know well from his Heidelberg days, George.
And also Northcote, as you mentioned.
Yes, won the title with Goran Lozanovsky in 2013. He's had quite a career. And we even dig into how it was that for a little run of games there, he ended up taking penalties as a goalkeeper in open play, not in a shootout situation.
That's perfect. That just tells you he has what it takes here and up here.
So,
Josh Parrish, good luck tonight.
Thank you.
And looking forward to hearing more about that. Join us next week, State of Our Football Nation on FNR. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.